What is the most BS reason for a teacher to give you a bad grade? And yes, I'm a bot. What you gonna do about it, huh? We had weekly spelling tests in my 11th grade English class, which I thought was a bit remedial by that point, and probably said so in a not completely diplomatic way. The teacher even made you write any words you got wrong 5 times and hand that into her by 10th of the class. I would typically get perfect scores on them, but one time I got a test back with no actual errors, marked as a 0%. My teacher's explanation was she saw me talking to someone in our free period before class who ended up doing poorly, and that was my fault because I distracted them from possibly studying. A friend of mine got a -1 for scratching his head. Our teacher said he was faking it. I guess that teacher had too many bad experiences with women who faked head scratches. Fake head scratches are a real problem in our society, and they are probably what causes hurricanes. My friend failed French because she had a French accent. And the teacher couldn't understand her French because she was American. My friend had spoke French since she was 4. My 7th grade gym teacher gave me a D because I hardly ever smiled. My life sucked at that time. Got points off because of the bad grammar in the quote I used. The quote was "Epenhemas I'm become death, destroyer of worlds." Not me, but a friend. We were in GCSE art many years ago. Our teacher used to make us hold up our paintings and she would grade them on the spot. For some / no reason she had it in for my friend. So a third friend holds up his painting. "Very good, Nick, that is an A." He then quickly slides his painting down the table to our friend, who is sitting like 2 spaces next to him. He then holds up the same painting. Bear in mind she saw this same painting like 20 seconds prior. "Oh Sam, that is not very good, not very good at all. You shall receive a D." It was a creative writing assignment with no guidelines for style, genre, or content. I got a C because my story was too unrealistic. We were given the start of the story. We were staying at our grandparents' farm, running across a field. All of a sudden the ground gave way beneath our feet as we fell down a hole, then were instructed to continue the story. No other directions. So my fantasy story wasn't real enough. I guess she wanted our characters to just collapse in a pit and languish. My theology professor once gave me a D on a paper I wrote because it was riddled with grammatical errors that made it unreadable. I came to his office hours and read it back to him and asked him to stop me whenever I hit a mistake. We got through the entire paper and he sheepishly changed my grade to an A. Still pisses me off to this day. I was in a wheelchair because of a nerve injury when I was 13. The dance teacher gave me a B for effort. Apparently I didn't press play on the CD player with enough enthusiasm. Me, Miss 30th, you didn't give me a point for this, but it is on the mark scheme. Miss 30th, I don't agree with the mark scheme, so I didn't give you the mark. For context, this is a standardized test, which is why there is a mark scheme. Edit, this is a practice test. We used past papers and hence past mark schemes. Sorry for the confusion. My teacher lost my coursework on the bus home. I refused to redo a year's worth of work in 3 weeks, and I got taken from an A to a C. BS. School sided with him. Staples were not in the right spot for my essay, even though I had them in the top left corner like always. I got 10/10ths on a test, but my teacher took points away from me because she didn't want my classmates to be jealous of my grade. This was English class in a Dutch school, so English is a requirement. I was the only native English speaker in my class and this was a course for adults only. My 4th grade teacher didn't allow me to be left-handed, and it really affected my grades and everything. It also stuck with me. I used to be exclusively left-handed in most things, but after that school year I was mostly just left-handed in writing, and not much else. And sometimes I kind of wish that hadn't happened, like it took away a small part of my identity. I've got dysgraphia, which is basically a medical reason for absolutely shitty handwriting. I got a special allowance to use a device, I forget what it was called, that was basically a digital typewriter. It amounted to a keyboard with a simple B/W/LCD screen. You could hook it to a computer or printer to easily print stuff off it. It didn't have internet or even a calculator, it only functioned to type. One teacher wouldn't let me use it, despite her legally not being able to do that. Little 6th grade me didn't know she was literally breaking the law, and went with it. We had a test, and I got marked down for poor penmanship. My mom asked me why I didn't use my typing device, and I told her the teacher wouldn't allow it. She raised hell. She bleep destroyed that teacher, and for the rest of the year, despite my teacher's objections, I was allowed to use my device anytime I wanted. Not a bad grade, but I remember I was so close to being the first person to ever score a 100% on my 10th grade Spanish final. The one question I got wrong was, ¿Qué tipo de comida es el pescado? What type of food is fish? A. El carne, meat. B. La fruta, fruit. C. El pan, bread. D. La verdura, vegetable. I of course picked meat, and got it wrong, because my teacher insisted that fish isn't meat. She's a Catholic, and eats fish on Fridays during Lent. According to her the correct answer is fruit, because fish are sometimes known as the fruit of the sea. What the actual F? Cram your 99%, Sinora. Didn't happen to me, but a teacher kinda gave everyone in a class bad grades because they ditched her. They all planned to hang out after the last class. Guess she was bitter about it. I had a BITCHY religion professor back in junior high school. She lowered the grade of another student because they had written in the exam that when Moses got the 10 commandments there was lightning, when the correct answer was thunderbolts. I did a presentation in biology. The teacher told me she wanted me to do a creative introduction instead of just opening it with the standard "today I'll be presenting." So I did. I invented a short story about an old lady going to the supermarket and worked in some early symptoms of Alzheimer's, the topic I was presenting. I was so invested in that character, she had a name and a backstory. I even drew up a few comic panels so that everyone could follow along easily. Then at the end of my presentation I asked my class which symptoms the old lady in the story had, and hence what stage her Alzheimer's was. I get my grade back, and the teacher deducted points for the intro, since she told me to do a creative intro, so it wasn't an original idea. Like what the hell? I came up with the story, I drew the comic panels, all of that was me. I felt so betrayed. If I hadn't done a creative intro she would have deducted points, so I did one, and she deducted points anyway. And after all that work, still grinds my gears. I was 15 at the time. I failed a lit exam in college because I answered a question too well. We were supposed to write an essay comparing and contrasting one of the books that we read that semester to a modern concept or ideal. We had known about this particular question for weeks, so we had had plenty of time to prepare. Apparently it's possible to be too correct, because the response I got was that, though it is clear I did not plagiarize, none of my thoughts were original, and matched too closely with the author's interpretation of the work. I was the only person in the class to not only fail, but to get less than a B. I got no other bad marks on the rest of the exam either. He failed me, based on just that one part. I had a psychology teacher like that. She would ask the most biased questions guaranteed to start fights and only her opinion was right. I mean baited stuff like which political party is better, which gender is superior, which sex is more likely to succeed, stuff like that. And her response would always be something like, "Oh well, you are entitled to your opinion, but here is why you are wrong," and her tests would be the same way. You literally just had to write down her opinion, or you were wrong. Reminds me of a high school history teacher I had. Gave me a D on an opinion paper about if avian flu would be a devastating pandemic on the scale of the Spanish flu in 1918. I said it wouldn't. Apparently the WHO, CDC, and basic science aren't as good of sources as the local news that convinced her we were all going to die. I already posted here, but I have another story. Had a high school French teacher who failed me on a written test for using pencil. He claimed his eyes only saw pen. My family was outraged and called the dean. The dean was like, oh well, he's getting them ready for standardized tests. My entire family had master's degrees plus and were like, what standardized test is in pen? It's always pencil. This is a school. Years later I have my doctorate. And not one goddamn test ever was pen only, standardized or otherwise. My paper didn't make her feel happy. It was an analytical writing course designed to teach how to write a thesis. The teacher was one of these super hippie artsy people and most of the curriculum involved just reading articles she failed to get published. So we had to do this analytical discourse on someone's work, and it was trash, so I picked it apart. I got a F. I went to her saying WTF. I followed the rubric to the T. Her response, so well, the paper was good and all, but it didn't make me happy. It was kind of mean, and I don't like mean. I was like, the assignment was to find flaws in the paper. It had countless. She replied yes, but it didn't make me happy. You get a ref. I went to the chair, and it turns out her father was on the board of directors, and she had sued the school several times. So she was bulletproof and got to do whatever the hell she wanted. For the final submission of my graphic design college qualification, the brief was to design branding for a pub/club. I got a B because my concept was too cool. The sheer mind effing BS of that actually knocked me so hard that I didn't even bother pursuing it as a career beyond the course. Because I got pregnant in high school. I took my exam with my friend's exam to her and showed her that my answers marked incorrect were the same answers my friend gave that were correct. Yet I got a C. Teacher said I didn't deserve an A. When I was in school, a teacher refused to accept our assignment. 2 people. He had specifically asked for it to be printed. We completed it the day before it was due and had to print it in blue because we had run out of black ink. After we got our bad grade, my friend's mom came to the school and made a scandal because she couldn't understand why we had failed, only to be told by the teacher that he hadn't even looked at the content because the ink was blue. She took it to the headmistress, who then forced him to accept the assignment because it really wasn't a valid reason. Funnily, after that I printed another assignment in red ink just to mess with him. College professor gave me a 0 on a grade claiming I turned it in late. No, I did not turn it in late. The other black male in the class turned his in late. And no, we look nothing alike. Not me, but a classmate. So we had this annoying D of a teacher that acted like he hated his job and would always be in a bad mood and be cocky towards us students. Such a bleep of a guy. Anyways, my friend was doing her oral presentation and another student from a different class knocked on our classroom door and opened it to ask the teacher for something. I don't remember. The teacher gave my friend a 0 because of that one kid who came in our class. What a prick of a teacher. TL. Dr. Friend got a 0 from prick teacher because someone walked in the classroom while he was presenting. When I was in college, I had a professor walking around collecting a homework assignment that was 10% of our grade. Being the unorganized person that I am, I'm digging through my folders trying to find which one has it. She walks by me as I'm still looking and meanders toward her podium. Before she even gets to the front of the class, I find it and run up to her to hand it in. She looks me dead in the eyes and says, "That's late, you get a 0. I called her a string of horrible things. She really was. This was just the final straw. Dropped the course and took it again with an amazing prof the next semester.